Countyfairgrounds and Cool K here. Do I have the one, the only Joe Gandelman on the line with me?
This is Joe.
Hi, Joe. You're a comedian and a ventriloquist, right?
Yes. Uh-huh.
And you want to tell me how that all happened in your life?
Well, I am a ventriloquist and a comedian, yes. And I've been doing it for let's see, I used to be a newspaper reporter. And I worked on newspapers. I freelanced overseas in India, Spain, and Bangladesh for the Chicago Daily News and the Christian Science Monitor. I even did some voice reports for National Public Radio. And then I worked on the Wichita Eagle Beacon and the San Diego Union. And then in 1990, I just quit and became a ventriloquist. I figured I worked on newspapers. I had worked for dummies. Now they work for me.
Well, there's a lot of things you could have become. I mean, what pushed you in that direction?
Well, I wanted to be an actor when I was a kid. And I was in this theater group, the Emily Theater Music Workshop, where they would do plays for six weeks to rehearse a play and then do 6 performances with a live orchestra of students. And one of the people who became very famous, William Knight, changed his name to William Atherton. He was the guy who let the EPA guy in Ghostbusters who let all the ghosts go. He was in our group, and I had leads in some of the musicals, like I was Fagin in Oliver Twist and a couple of things, and sub leads in some other ones. And I wanted to become an actor. Everybody said it was really, really, really good. And then when it came time to decide on a college, my parents talked me out of it. They're afraid of me going into acting. So I caved, and I decided I'd do journalism because I like to write. And that got me in that. And then, but gradually I started to get more and more disgusted with the way newspapers were going. I predicted they would start to die, which they started to do. And I left in 1990. And because I had been doing this as a hobby to relieve stress, I quit the newspaper business. And actually, if you're, my mentor was somebody named, well, the first letter I wrote was to Paul Winchell, with Paul Winchell and Jerry Mahoney. And Paul Winchell wrote me back, and because I asked him where to get a dummy, he said, "Forget toy stores, and don't go to a toy store. Go to a magic shop." And I bought my first dummy at a magic shop. Very long story on that you don't want to hear. But then my mentor became Jimmy Nelson, who did the old Nestle's Quick commercials, Nestles, Nestle's makes, And I went to visit and I went to visit my parents in Marco Island, where they spent half the year in Florida. It turned out that he had retired, well, not on the road anymore, and he was working for a bank, doing all their public relations. And Jimmy said he'd look at my videos that I shot and critique them. And he gave me very, very positive feedback. And at one point, I would talk to him and visit him in Florida. I'd call him on the phone. We had lunch together once at their house. And but at one point he said, "You're somebody who could do this full time. You're smiling when you do it. You look really, really happy, and you're smiling, and you could do it." And he sort of convinced me when we talked about it that I should try it full time. So he was my mentor, very active mentor, and that's how I got started doing it. So I went full time in November 7th, 1990.
Well, one of the questions I always like to ask is, are you a married man?
No, I was married to a newspaper, and I was warned about that by some. I'm not joking. I was warned about that by a reporter right before he moved and left the newspaper, because I put in 40 hours of overtime one time on the newspaper, and the publisher's office complained bitterly. But I would just come back and talk to my sources on the phone. They'd be calling me in, and then I got involved in the Big Brother program. And took this kid out on weekends. It's a very long story on that, but eventually, in Wichita, I'd done a little bit of that. But in San Diego, I did that. And this kid had a lot of problems, and he became my foster son. So I spent a lot of my time working and also taking him places. And actually, he has some health issues, and he still lives at my house. He's 52. He has congestive heart failure. So, and he has a 5-year-old kid and everything like this. So I really got sort of wedded to working on the newspaper and taking this kid out on weekends and then doing other things on weekends. So I never got married.
All right. So where have you performed at, and where would you like to perform at?
Well, my favorite venue still are fairs. I love doing fairs, and last year I had about 3 or 4 of them. Right now I got 2 coming up in the summer. But my favorite venues are fairs, and I like doing schools. I like doing the variety shows, and I just like different kinds. I like doing the shows for adults. I've never had a desire to perform in a casino ever, but I like doing the private parties for adults, the corporate. But my favorite venue out of all venues are fairs.
Well, you know, I've interviewed a lot of comedians in the past. I mean, I've been doing interviews since like about 2010.
Wow.
But, yeah, for a long time. But a lot of the comedians, you're a ventriloquist. How did that happen? How did that happen?
What, that I became a ventriloquist comedian?
Yeah, well, I know comedians, I understand. I have never interviewed a ventriloquist before.
I'm sure you interviewed a lot of dummies.
Well, yeah.
Well, actually, you know, I didn't even like many ventriloquists as a kid. My favorite ventriloquist was Jimmy Nelson, because he didn't smile every time the puppet talked. Sherry Lewis would always smile. She got better in later years, but she always would clench her teeth and smile when Lamb Chop talked. And Paul Winchell, every single time that puppet talked, he'd be clenching his teeth and smiling. So I just didn't like Paul Winchell. I liked Paul Winchell. I loved him as an entertainer, but he wasn't really who I liked the best. The best for me was, well, Senior Wences, back to the old Ed Sullivan show from Spain, and then Jimmy Nelson.
Okay.
So I like these people, and I had been doing ventriloquism to relieve stress. I had gotten a book from a magic shop in Wichita and had a plastic dummy, and I was playing around with the dummy and everything like this, and I just did it to relieve stress, and then the more I did it, the more I wanted to keep doing it. And so when 1990 came, I was so disgusted with what was happening in newspapers, and I just felt well, maybe I see a lot of people doing all these parties. Maybe because I've been doing this and practicing it, maybe I could do this full time. And of course, Jimmy Nelson was encouraging me because he liked what I was doing, and I just made a decision to quit the newspaper cold, and I had nothing lined up.
Okay. But so what was your first show that you got paid for?
I think my first probably was before I went full time. When I was working on the newspaper, I started putting out cards and doing some ads in some Jewish newspapers, because I'm Jewish and I get these things in the mail. I even lost a lot of money putting ads in the yellow pages. But the first show I did, I think that was paid. Well, I think the first show that I did was when I paid was a birthday show. And the first professional show I did right off the newspaper was a school assembly. And I love doing schools. The first fair I did.
Were you paid for that school show? I'm curious.
Yes.
Oh, that's cool. Go ahead.
Yeah, I managed because I had so much advertising, was really good at writing my advertising copy, and I had a really good photographer. So I sort of talked myself into it with the imagery, you know?
Yeah.
In fact, one of this Jewish newspaper in this big long feature on me quoting me. I wrote the whole thing myself.
Yeah, I'm
told that's how newspapers now do it, actually, because they've laid so many people off. The best way to get a profile of something in the newspaper is just present them with a finished article. Paid show was at school in Poway. And then fairs, I didn't even think about doing fairs, and somebody mentioned fairs and festivals. And then I did a festival. The Gilroy Garlic Festival was the first I ever did. And then the first fair I did now it's huge, and I haven't done it since, but because this goes back to 1991 or 92, was the Del Mar Fair, which runs like 2 or 3 weeks.
That's a big fair.
That's a very big fair. Yeah.
Yeah. How many performances a day did you do? Do you remember?
I think they had me do 3.
Wow. That's very stressful.
Yeah, well, I've done more. I mean, I have some where I've done 3 shows and also done walk around, because I walk around with the characters.
Oh, of course, you're a grounds act.
Yes. Yeah, I'm not a headliner. I'm a grounds act. Yeah. They put me in the family area, the kids area, the family area. I've had a couple of fairs that use me for general shows, and I've done general shows, where I have adults and kids. And like the Arizona State Fair, that was the biggest fair I did. That was in 2022. And they had me do 2 weeks of walk around and 2 weeks of shows. 3 shows a day and 3 walk-around sets, or 4 walk-around sets a day.
How do you feel about that fair? That's a big fair.
Oh, I loved it. I hope they invite me back. They really liked it. They gave me a great reference and everything. And I absolutely loved doing that fair. Oh, I loved it.
Yeah, that's cool.
And I did the South Dakota State Fair last year. They had me do maybe one show a day and walk around.
Anyway, have you been overseas?
Oh, well, not to perform. I mean, I was overseas for years as a journalist, but not to perform.
Would you like to?
Oh, I'd love to.
Okay.
But of course, the way I do my show, it's sort of hard to do it because I use a very, very, very big cast of characters. I may do 10 segments in a show. It's like puppet, 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 puppet. And I do the audience participation where somebody puts on a ventriloquist mask and they become a talking puppet. So I have all these things that I do during the show.
Okay, but you can't use that many characters as a walk around, can you?
What I do is I show up with all these puppets, and when I do walk around, I walk around for a while with one character, then I put it away and get another one. So they constantly see me showing up with a different character. If
you do a stage show, what's that like?
Well, most fairs have me do 20 minutes to 30 minutes. Sometimes they have me do 45. I'm doing a fair in Evanston, Wyoming. I forget the name of the fair. I don't have my thing in front of me right now. But that's going to be in early this year, in late July into early August. And I'm doing a fair in Utah, and they want me to just do walk around, which is very unusual. The first one where they just asked me to do the walk around. But typically a stage show, I come out and I'm bringing out my main character, John Raven, who's the typical, as they say, the old phrase, cheeky boy, and a kid who's giving wise guy. And I do John, and then after John, I bring out sometimes a genie, or I bring out a troll puppet, or I have interactive puppets like the Axtell elephant does a bit, and then he surprises everybody and squirts into the front row with water. I have a dragon who has fake smoke come out of his nose. I have a zombie. When people shake the zombie's hand, the whole arm comes off in their hand. And they have a ventriloquist mask. But I also do this thing where when I do my shows, I'm talking to the audience, interacting with them a lot.
So the kids love you?
Oh, they love it, yes. Kids absolutely love the shows, yes.
Okay. Well, you had gripes about being a newspaper man. You got gripes about being as kind of an entertainer?
No, actually not. Although I must say, it's of course, it's a lot more uncertain doing this than with your newspaper check.
Yeah.
But I have my nightmare is I'm still working at the newspaper. I have this dream where I'm still sitting down. I've gone back to the newspaper. It's a horrible nightmare. Only thing worse is the one about high school in the cafeteria eating that food. But aside from that.
Okay. Well, which states would you like to perform in that you haven't had the opportunity to?
Well, I've been all over. I'm trying to put a bigger push on California because a lot of the states I'm doing are out of state. But I expect to do more in California and Arizona. I think a lot of states, the West Coast, California, Arizona. I'd love to do some fairs on the East Coast because I am originally from the East Coast.
There's a lot of fairs on the East Coast, dear.
Oh, I know, yes. Where are you located?
I'm in Canyon City, which is, like 60 miles south west of Colorado Springs.
Okay, so yeah, I did the fair in Colorado Springs. Cool. I did the El Paso County Fair twice.
Oh, that's cool.
Once my mother passed away during that time, and they invited me back 2 years later to do it, but I did that fair twice. Yeah. Okay.
So how many fairs a year approximately do?
Oh, boy. It varies. One year it could be none. Last year it was 4. This year right now 2 are lined up. It's still sort of early because I still could have something come through for September or October. But yeah, it varies per year. I had one year where I was going for 5 solid weeks.
Oh, sounds tiring, dear.
Yes, the driving.
Okay, so you actually transport all your own stuff and set up your own stuff.
If I can drive, I drive. But like the ones this summer, I'm going to have to fly in. I'll fly to the fair in Wyoming, do the fair there, and then ship some stuff, and then do the fair in Utah and come back.
All right. Well, sounds good. So how do people reach you if they want to book you?
Well, if they want to reach me, I have a really easy to reach website. It's www.familyentertainer.com. Now, if they type it in and they get Mickey Mouse, it means they typed in Family Entertainment. But I'm www.familyentertainer.com. I believe I'm also www.familyentertainer.net. A couple of domain, but it's familyentertainer.com.
You do your own booking?
I do my own bookings, and I also have an agent in Vegas who pitches me and books me for some things.
Hey, Vegas. You performed in Vegas?
Well, not really a fair in Vegas. I've done a couple of fairs in Nevada, but I've never performed. Oh, Vegas, as far as a casino, no. The one casino I performed in as part of a variety show was in California some years ago.
Okay. All right. So you wouldn't have any, qualms about recommending somebody go into something like this then?
Oh, it's a hard thing to go into. I mean, it's like right now. I mean, what I try to do is I book myself locally, and there's been a lot of changes locally due to the gig law in California. It's a long story, but if you work for an independent company as an independent contractor, they almost don't allow it anymore. And it made the company that I was involved with, a co-op of 25 entertainers that did libraries and schools, lots of libraries in the summer. It was sort of my backup, the private parties in the libraries, and some company shows and corporate, all that. But that has been impossible to book this year because of the change, or hard to book because they can't book the same way. So I just booked a lot of local stuff this year. Just managed to do it myself. So it's not it's easy learning how to. It really is not hard to learn ventriloquism. But the hardest part is figuring out what you're going to say, kind of comedy you're going to do. And the second thing is, getting yourself booked, because you can't just go to an agent and say, I'm a ventriloquist. They'll say, so what? So you have to really just keep doing shows and booking yourself, doing every single show you can do. Yeah. But I was very lucky because the bulk of my shows are all paid shows from the time I started doing it. I did very few free shows.
Hey, darling, do you have a YouTube channel?
It has a lot of stuff up there. Stuff that's old. Yes, it's Joel Gandelman and Friends YouTube. Some of the stuff needs to come down, but it's been up there. It has some short videos that I've done on TikTok. If I'm on TikTok, I got about 38,000 followers and about 107,000 likes on YouTube. And but it's Joel Gandelman and Friends, comic ventriloquist Joel Gandelman and Friends on YouTube. Yes, the website is really good.
I take it you like doing this much better than being a newspaper reporter.
Oh God, yes. When you were a newspaper reporter, people were very unhappy when you showed up, and a lot of the time they were happy when you left. Yeah. As an entertainer, you hope that they're happy when you show up, and you certainly hope that they're happy when you leave and smiling. But I much rather do this.
Okay. Well, it sounds good. Sounds like you've been doing a really good job. Okay, so there's not any particular. You'd like to do some shows on the East Coast, right?
I will do fairs on the East Coast. Yes, of course. It'll because of the cost of flying out there. There's like a cost structure. But I mean, I did lots of fairs in Texas over the years. I did fairs in Michigan. So I've done them in many, many states across the country. South Dakota. I did the South Dakota State Fair last year.
Okay. Well, and then people can reach you through your website. Do you want to leave a phone number?
Yes. Phone number is 858-240-7860. Again, 858 area code 240-7860.
Okay. Thank you. I've enjoyed the interview. We'll get it up.
All right. Okay. Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.